Hi, welcome back to Traffic Jam with Cam. My podcast is all about finding who you are and reminding you that you're not alone. With that, this episode I have for you today is another interview, and our topic is an intro to yoga. In the last year, which was the hardest year of my life, I found yoga and it saved me. Practicing yoga at home kept me grounded and helped me better take control of my mental health. So I wanted to invite a seasoned yoga expert to do an episode with me and talk about the basics of yoga. You lucked out hearing from one of my closest friends, Issa, a few weeks ago, and now you get to hear from her mom. Whitney has taught yoga for over 20 years. She is experienced in various forms of yoga and all the benefits that come along with practicing, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi, Whitney. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
This week, Whitney is our special guest, and she is you can give kind of an intro about who you are, but I know Whitney as an expert yoga instructor, and so she's going to give us a little recap on her background, and then I have some questions / topics that we can kind of talk about, and she's going to give us the lowdown intro to yoga for people that might be new to it.
Yeah, so my background is I've been practicing yoga for 22 years now. And I got certified. I did my first certification through Yoga Fit. And then I have another certification where I got my 200 hours. That's just a level of certification where you do 200 hours of training. And that was through My Joy Yoga. And I've been teaching, I always base this on how old my kids are. And I have a son that's 19, and I started teaching when he's a baby. So that's how I've been teaching for 19 years now. And I've taught at several, mostly my settings have just been in gyms. And one was more of a yoga studio, but I have a lot of experience just teaching in gyms. Currently, I teach at Gold's Gym in Twin Falls, Idaho.
Cool. Okay, awesome. Well, before we jump into the questions,
yes,
I usually do a traffic jam of the week. So the podcast Traffic Jam with Cam, I always like to talk about a little speed bump or something just annoying or something to complain about that happened this week, or maybe something that's bothering me. So I wrote down an idea that I had for a traffic jam that I had this week, and then if you have thought of one, then you can share yours too. So for me, I was I don't know when. I mean, this is something that I've noticed since I've lived in Virginia. In Virginia for a little over a year now, and then my husband and I are going to be moving back to Idaho later this fall. One thing that I've noticed since being here and living in Virginia, there are so many trees everywhere, which is super cool and awesome because everything's green, but it's so hard to see anything. So like it shades the sun a lot, and you can't see the sky very well, and also it's so easy to get lost.
Yeah.
Like in Idaho, you can just look around, see, okay, the mountains are over this way, this way, the farmland this way, and it's easy to be oriented still. But here it's so easy to get lost because you're in this deep forest of trees, and it's not as easy to see like the sunshine and like the big blue sky. So I definitely missed that. And this week I was just like, man, that'll be kind of nice when we move back to Idaho to be able to see the big sky again, not get lost so easily. But that is something that is a little bit not annoying, but just like a change or something that was weird to get used to here. But yeah, you can't see the sun and the sky as well in Virginia because you're just in a dense forest.
I've been to Virginia before, and I love all the trees. They're just so mesmerizing where you're just driving. It's just you're in this tunnel of trees.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying. You can't see any landmarks to help you, like, oh, because here in Twin Falls, it's like South Hills are that way, that's south, canyons this way, that's north, to help you kind of get your bearings. So
yeah.
I get what you're talking about.
Yeah, Yeah, I don't know if that's like everywhere on the East Coast but I feel like that's definitely more an East Coast-ish thing, is like forest, and then when you get west, it's more like plains.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a traffic jam for us?
Yes, I actually do have one, which is, I thought that this podcast was yesterday. So, so I was like all geared up and set aside this time to do the podcast. And I was waiting right where I am right now. And then I was sitting there like, what's going on here? And then I checked and I was like, oh my gosh.
I'm so sorry.
Actually today, which is totally my fault. And I do that myself all the time. So that's my little speed bump of the week, that I thought the podcast was yesterday.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, you're extra prepared now.
Yes, right?
Yeah. Okay, awesome. So let's see. My first question was, you kind of talked about it a little bit with talking about your background and how you got started, but could you talk a little bit more about what made you even think about doing yoga in the first place, or maybe if someone introduced you to it, or how you heard about it, and then when you were like, oh, I want to do this more?
Yeah. So like I said, I've been practicing I'm 44. So it was 22 years ago when I was 22. We lived in Oklahoma City. My husband was doing dental school, and I just had this little 2-year-old Isa and a baby, my next daughter, Allie Bell. I don't know if you know her or have met Allie Bell before. And I would go to the gym every day. That was kind of like my little outing, my little break. I would load up the girls. They would go to the little daycare for an hour, and I would go exercise. Well, I was going to this body pump class, and it was just getting too full in there where you couldn't find a spot or space, to set up your stuff. And so there was a yoga class that was happening next door to me. I'd never done yoga before. I didn't know anybody who practiced yoga. I just thought, I'm going to go to the class next door. So I remember I went to Sears, of all places, and bought this huge, it was just like an exercise mat. Like, I didn't even know what a yoga mat was. And so I show up with my huge exercise mat that's like thick and too big, just not the right thing. And I show up in this yoga class, and I knew immediately, like, okay, I'm not quite dressed right. I'm not, like, I've got the wrong mat, but everybody was super nice. And I immediately, like, after that first class, I was like, I'm coming back. I'm coming back to the next class. So I went and got I told my husband too, I'm like, we have to take this mat back and get a real yoga mat. And I showed up to the next class, like, just so much. I just like jumped in, like, closed my eyes, jumped into the yoga. And after my first class, I've never stopped doing it for 22 years. The teacher was awesome. It's funny because I was thinking about her because of this. And she was actually my age now when I started taking the class. And she was just so good and just so inspiring to me. And so, like I said, I've just been doing it ever since. Half my life.
Yeah, that is so cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, very cool. That's a great intro. You also talked a little bit about your certifications that you have. What prompted you you said you got certified 2 years after you started doing yoga? Is that or?
Yeah, like 2 or 3 years, somewhere in. So what happened was I'd just been going to classes regularly for a couple of years, and then we moved to Iowa, and I just wanted to continue practicing yoga. And so I went to a class, and I just felt like I walked in, did the class, and I was like, you know what? I actually have something different than what they're offering here. I feel like I have something that I could offer this community of what I learned from this teacher in Oklahoma. She was like my guru, so I decided to get certified and I did it. I did, like I said, it was Yoga Fit level 1. And I immediately started teaching. So part of the certification is, you go to the workshops and stuff and you get the training, and then you have to do community service. So I did 10 hours of free yoga. Cool. They let me do it there. Anybody could come for free. And then after that, which is great because you actually get to practice teaching and kind of figure it out a little bit. And it's just offered for free. And then you can start teaching for real. So I did.
Wow. Very cool. Okay. That's awesome. I guess I should have mentioned this before that, I'm not super familiar with certifications or the different kinds of yoga. And so, I think this is really helpful for me and also people that are listening that might want to know more about it. Maybe we'll have some people listening that want to be certified. They don't know how to go about it, or maybe just people that are like, hey, I've heard of yoga before. I've heard it's beneficial. So what else? And so that's kind of what this is for. So this is really helpful. Thank you. All right. So next, I wrote down the question, what surprised you the most about yoga when you started practicing? Is there anything that you maybe didn't expect or that?
Well, I think the first thing was I've never done anything before like that where I was immediately like, I'm going to keep doing, like, I'm going to be back the next day and I'm going to keep doing this. And just that I found something that I loved so much that I knew I was never going to stop. And I feel like I've said this before, I would be a different person right now if I didn't practice yoga. It's definitely not a religion. I do not view it as a religion at all. Maybe some people do, but I do feel like it can be a very spiritual thing where, so that surprised me because usually when you exercise, it's like, oh, I'm trying to lose weight or I'm trying to get fit so I can go run this race or so I can, enter in this competition. And to me, it wasn't like that at all. It was just, I just want to feel good. And I loved how much it helped me appreciate my mind because you want to be mentally fit and healthy, and how much it made me appreciate my body and kind of the connection between the mind, the spirit, the body. So I just wasn't expecting that because that's not really what I was looking for either. It was just like on a whim, I went and tried yoga. So
yeah, I think that's so awesome though. What a cool story that you weren't even going out looking for it, but it just, you kind of stumbled across it. And then it was this wonderful thing that you've taken with you throughout your life. That's really, that's a special thing to find your thing. Like,
it really is. Cause that's something I've thought about too. A lot of times with my husband, he has things that he's passionate about. And sometimes you find those things when you're a kid or you're really young, like you'll really take to, oh, I just love music and I just play the piano all the time, or I'm a dancer, or, a hobby. Like, for example, my husband loves hunting and he loves his hunting dogs and training dogs. And for me, it was like, oh, I didn't find that till I was a mom, basically. I know 22 is still pretty young, but it was like, I wasn't a kid. It wasn't anything my parents made me do or tried to get me to do. It was something I found for myself,
Yeah. I love that you said that you talked about the different ages, or it comes at different times in your life for some people. Cause I remember being younger and wanting to find my thing. I was like, and for me, I thought it was like, I was looking in like sports. So I was like, I would try soccer, tennis, volleyball, basketball. I feel like in elementary school, middle school, I tried like all the sports because I just wanted to have a thing. And I've talked about this in other episodes of my podcast before about how when I found dance in middle school, that I was the same way. I started going to dance classes. I joined the dance team. I was on the dance team in high school. I've done some teaching, I've done some coaching, and that I feel like that is my thing. But I felt, even as a kid, I remember feeling a lot of pressure to like find what that is, and like, oh, there's, this person is amazing at music, like you said, or this person's good at this. And I think I'm just glad that you said that, because it's okay if you don't find it right away. But I think that everyone has at least something that's like that. And even if it takes time to find it, then once you find what your thing is, like, it can really help you. But I don't know. I think everyone might find it at different times, but that everyone has one. So that's just what I think. But that's pretty cool. That's a really cool idea that you mentioned.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to like different kinds of yoga. Like I mentioned before, I am not very familiar with the world of yoga. I was telling Whitney before we started recording that the only yoga I had ever done before is just in my own home. And I go on YouTube, and there's a girl named Adrienne who has a channel. Her channel is called Yoga with Adrienne. And she just records videos of her doing practicing yoga for 15, 20, 30 minutes, an hour. And you can follow along with her. She kind of teaches and talks through it. And so I got a yoga mat at home and just had done it in my apartment or in my house by myself. I have never been to a yoga class. I've never done it with other people, which I would love to now that I've learned more about it. That's really the only experience I've had with yoga. I didn't even know that there were different kinds or what the different styles of yoga were called. So could you maybe give a brief overview of what some of the different kinds of yoga are, the different styles and how they're different, maybe? What, if you could explain so people know.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I mean, there's lots of varieties of yoga. I feel like my class is a blend of a few different styles. So basically, the most popular one, kind of an umbrella for lots of yoga, is the Hatha yoga. And it's where you're connecting your breath to so you're holding a pose and you've got the breath. And I tell my class this all the time, the most important part of your yoga practice is the breath. Breath is primary, poses are secondary. And so it's just about bringing that balance, kind of your sun energy and your moon energy, your feminine, masculine. So you'll find that in most yoga classes that you go to is that style. The other one, and that I incorporate a lot in my class, is the Ashtanga yoga, which is the flowing. It's the sun salutations. Occasionally in my class, we'll do moon salutation too. That one's just slower, and the sun salutation super fiery and build heat, and the moon salutation is just more calming and soothing. And in my class, we always do the sun salutations. So that's where you're linking your breath to your movement, where it's like one breath, one movement. Sometimes kind of a offshoot of that would be power yoga. A lot of athletes like that style of yoga where you're just flowing, moving, sweating, holding very strong athletic poses.
Okay.
And then there's the Bikram yoga or the hot yoga. I'm sure, I don't know, is that popular in Virginia right now?
Not that I'm familiar with. It could be.
Yeah.
Maybe don't hear about that crowd, but I don't really know if I could tell you like a place that does it here.
It's it originated as Bikram yoga, but you have to pay this Bikram guy all this money to call it that. So people call it hot yoga, where you up to like 100 and something degrees, and then you just do the same 26 poses every time, and people just like drip sweat, got like pools of sweat around them when they. So again, that's
for more of like a sweaty workout.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's more for people too who they like the routine of, I know which 26 poses I'm doing every time I come, and mine's that besides the fact that I always do the sun salutations, we usually have a different theme or a different peak pose of the day, and there's a lot of variety. So
cool. Like yoga for lower back or neck pain.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yep.
okay, cool. I didn't know that about hot yoga, that I knew that you turn up the temperature really hot
Yeah.
in the room, but I didn't know that anywhere you go, it's the same 20.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So this is another question I have just off of that. If generally, like when people go to a yoga class, is it common for it to be advertised as like, this is like Ashtanga yoga or something like that, or generally when you go to a yoga class, do most teachers, like, it's a mix of different styles? Do you know?
I think a lot, you'll know what you're getting yourself into, it's usually not just called yoga, for my class now. I think my class is just called yoga, but it used to be called yoga flow or flowing yoga. And I've taught the hot yoga before, and then I've taught warm yoga, which is how you temperature up to 80 degrees, so a little, yeah, I think usually you'll know what it's going to be, what to expect before you go.
Cool. Okay. And then you were telling me earlier about chakras, and that is something that maybe people have heard about or heard the term, I guess, but don't really know what the different ones are. Could you give us a rundown there?
Yeah, there's so much that could be said about the chakras. And so where I'm teaching at right now, I've taught there since 2006. And some people have been practicing yoga with me since 2006. Oh, wow. And at the beginning of every new year, we do a chakra series. And people really like that one because just the way it addresses different things for you, like we were talking about earlier, physical deficiencies, mental deficiencies, spiritual deficiencies. So there's 7 main chakras in the body, and chakra actually means will. That's the Sanskrit word for will. So the thought is there's these 7 spinning vortexes. I'll tell you where they are too in just a moment, but there's 7 spinning vortexes within your body, and you want to bring them into balance so that you can reach enlightenment. And I've told my class before, whether you believe that you actually have spinning vortexes or not, you really can just ponder and think about what we're talking about and how does this affect you, or, maybe where could you make some improvements in your life? So it starts at the base of the spine. There's the root chakra, and there's usually a color and an element associated with each one. So the root, if you think about it, is associated with your roots. So you ask yourself, am I feeling grounded, or am I feeling like I'm all over the place and scattered and, have a hard time scheduling things or getting things done? And it's another thing that you can reflect upon when you're doing a root chakra practice is your relationship with your parents. So you kind of think, oh, do I need to call my mom? Do I have a good relationship with my dad? Should I check in with my grandparents? It's just kind of things like that, where you just pause and reflect on those kinds of things. So then when you move up, so it's the root chakra, the sacral chakra, that's like your hips. That deals with your area of creativity and more of a romantic relationship with a significant other. Then there's the navel chakra, and that's the power chakra. That's your ability to, digestion for one thing. That would be like a physical part of it. Okay. Or your fire, where you get things done, and your relationship with coworkers and things like that. So then as you move up, and you can stop me if you're like, okay, this is a long explanation of the chakra.
I love it. I want to hear it all. Yeah, this is great.
Next one up is the heart chakra. And so that's the middle one. That's the bridge between, I should say, the more material and physical world. And then you move up to the spiritual realm. Oh. So this is your heart. This is where it resides, your ability to be open-hearted, love others, forgive others, things like that. Then you move to the throat chakra, and that's your communication. Extensions of that would be your ears, your ability to listen, communicate. The next one is the third eye. This is the home of your intuition. So you can see we're like moving to that spiritual realm. And then the seventh one is the crown chakra. And that's where you connect to a higher power. And then once you bring them all into balance, yogis say that you've reached enlightenment. So you got to have a strong foundation with your roots. And then you just kind of build upon that. And, you know, you can find that inner peace, that inner balance. But I just love how the heart is the bridge, you know, the connection between the two. So
I
it's kind of
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and people, they love learning about the chakras. They hate if they miss one, if they miss a class, like, oh, I missed the throat chakra. Now I'm going to be all out of balance. And it's like, no. But there's poses associated with each one, you know, so different poses, different mantras, you know, just thoughts that you have in your head or, you know, recite or chant that just help you reflect on different parts of your life and where you might be deficient, or maybe where you might be overstimulated. And so then you can kind of check in with yourself and bring it into balance.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting too, that it's not just you assessing deficiency, but also like overstimulation. I wouldn't have thought of that. That's really interesting. I had heard of those before. I didn't know that about the heart being kind of the bridge. That's really cool. But it makes sense.
I know. Yeah. Something that I learned, you know, as I studied the chakras is that your body has two places that it stores intelligence. One's the brain and one's the heart. So again, it's like you just know things in your head with your brain, but then you feel things, and that's a different sort of intelligence that you feel in your heart.
Yeah. Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I think it's really important to do self-reflection often. And so I love that yoga is a mix of you're still doing physical work and connecting your mind with your body, like you said, and working on that, but also just mentally checking in with yourself. And it seems like anytime you practice, and outside of that too, I guess you have the opportunity to kind of reflect and check in with yourself and see where you're at. And I just love the idea of that. It's reassuring to me to realize like, oh, I like have that in myself. Like I have the ability to check in, see where I'm at, and then what can I do? What can I do myself to, I don't know, have an effect on feeling or what I'm thinking. So
not just assuming that you're always doing everything right or you're fine. Just, you know I can improve.
Yeah.
Again, mentally, you know, I could be kinder, I could speak to others better. And a lot of times at the beginning of my class or my own personal private practice, we'll set an intention too with, you know, and I'll tell people or I'll ask them first, you know, what do you need from your practice today? Do you need more grace? Do you need more discipline? Do you need more balance? You know, there's a whole list of things you could come up with, and you just hold that word in your head and your heart. And then a lot of times during the practice, we'll come back to that intention, you know, remember that intention that you set for yourself today.
Yeah.
So.
Sweet. That's great. Okay. Well, while we wrap up here, I just also wanted to go over where to start, maybe to someone who is new to yoga or maybe hasn't even done it before. What are some things or resources that they could use to start out, whether it be like a book or a podcast, or would you recommend they go to a class or try to practice on their own first, or what do you think?
Well, first I would recommend a class, and I would say just do a little bit of research on where you're going. If you're really shy and really uncomfortable, I mean, I've had people do this before where they say, can I just watch my first time here. Can I just watch and see what's going on? And I usually get that from older people, not like people your age. They're fine to jump into anything. But if there was anybody that was listening, that's like, oh, I kind of want to see what's happening first. But another thing, if you are going to go to a class, and make sure you're 5-10 minutes early and go introduce yourself to the instructor and let them know, I'm new, I've never done yoga, or I have done yoga, but it's only been on video. So, I'm not sure how I've been doing. That's always very helpful to an instructor, because then they'll know to sort of keep an eye on you, help you with your alignment, give you modifications if you need. I know that classes aren't available to everyone. Honestly, a lot of times I just go on Pinterest and look. I mean, you could go Pinterest, search, or, like Google or whatever, like basic yoga sequence, and just find some simple poses that you can do. I don't do a lot of, I do a lot of stuff on my own. I don't really follow a lot of, in years past, I would follow videos or things on YouTube and stuff. So you can, I'm sure that you could find that, but that's kind of what I do right for myself right now. So.
Okay, great. Well, is there anything else that you want to add? Any other tips or advice that you want to share before we hop off?
I just feel like yoga's for everybody and everybody. That's what they say.
Yeah.
And not doing it, you have no idea what you're missing out on. So I think anybody and everybody should practice.
Well said.
Last thing I say too is, when you move to Idaho, come to Gold's Gym in Twin Falls and you can come to my yoga class.
Yes, I will be there.
Okay, good job.
Okay, thanks, Whitney.
Yep, thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Traffic Jam with Cam. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave me a rating and review so that the podcast can reach more people. I post new episodes on Monday mornings, and you can find me on Instagram at Traffic Jam Podcast. Talk to you next time. Bye.